inquiries at rigworldsolutions.com. Rigworld Solutions, crafted in Ghana, engineered for the world.
Hello and welcome to another edition of What the Papers Are Saying. My name is Duke Mensopoko. Now, What the Papers Are Saying is the only program on television that brings you the top headlines for the week from the various media outlets. In a bit, I'll be sharing with you what the top headlines are as captured by the major news outlets for the week. We'll take a break here. When I come back, I will go through with you the major issues, the various headlines as captured by the news outlets, and then I'll introduce my guest and we'll delve into the issues. Stay with us. So, three major issues under discussion, of course, teased out from the major headlines this week from the major news outlets. Of course, two of them emanating from the President's 16th update to the country regarding the management of government of the coronavirus pandemics. First, it's got to do with the partial reopening of schools and its postponement for some of the levels, basic education and secondary education, for some parts of them, to January 2021. Of course, the big one that most people were expecting, of course, the anticipation was very high, that of the reopening of the air borders of the country. The other borders, sea, by land, are still closed. We'll be having a discussion around that. Of course, just some 3 months to elections, the major political parties and all political parties, those who have a stake in the political process in the country, are actually preparing for that. The president has been touring the Volta region this week. He's back today, had some engagements at the flag staff house, the Jubilee House, if I may say it that way. And of course, the NDC flag bearer, John Dramani Mahama, is currently in the Upper West region also touring. Also, some other political parties, the National Democratic Party, with its flag bearer, former First Lady Nana Akufo-Addo has also been in the news this week, as well as PNC is also gearing up for its election of its flag bearer for the 2020 election. Let's take a look at the stories as captured by the major news portals this week. We'll begin from citynewsroom.com. Plan to resume schools in January 2021, disappointing. That's from the Early Childhood Education Association. From citynewsroom.com again. We've not imposed fees on private schools offering online tuition. That's from the National Inspectorate Board. The Daily Graphic, reopening schedule of pre-tertiary institutions, private schools disappointed. We go to citynewsroom.com again. No COVID-19 cases detected from KIA arrivals so far. That's from the Ghana Health Service. Citynewsroom.com again. $150 fee for COVID-19 tests against WHO regulation. Withdraw it now. That's from the Bureau of Public Safety. Another story from citynewsroom.com, still on the issues regarding the reopening of international borders. Charging passengers $150 for COVID-19 tests at airport, a fair deal. That's from the Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Bernard Okuboy. To the Daily Guide, Nana opens Kotoka Airport. That's from the Daily Guide. And the Ghanaian Times says, reopening of airports amid COVID-19, Ghana tightens measures. 80 PCR test kits deployed at Kotoka to test 1,200 new arrivals every day for COVID-19. To the Daily Statesman, President reopens Kotoka, but harbors and land borders still closed. That's from the Daily Statesman. And the Daily Analyst, Kotoka reopens for international flights, but under strict measures. That's how the Daily Analyst captured it. Economy Times, KIA reopens, arriving passengers to spend 15 minutes to get COVID-19 results. No quarantine. Or no quarantine. And towards election 2020, citynewsroom.com, so captured, shun those who promote ethnic sentiments and divisions. That's from Nanado. It's part of his tour of the Volta region. Citynewsroom.com, Mahama promises to prioritize welfare of persons with disabilities in next government. Citynewsroom.com, Awingobit promises to prioritize welfare of businesses if he wins power on PNC ticket. As Samson Awingobit, a presidential hopeful of the PNC. Graphic.com.gh, former First Lady Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings to be acclaimed as NDP flag bearer. The New Crusading Guide, NPP cracks Mahama, says he lacks focus. From the New Crusading Guide. The Ghanaian Observer, exposed. NDC introduced gold royalties company deal. Shun those who promote ethnic sentiments. So those are some of the major stories as captured by the major news outlets in the country, brought to you there. Of course, capturing the three main issues that we'll be discussing. Joining me in the studio to do the discussions on this edition of the program is Selom Adonu. Selom Adonu is head of features and articles here at CTFM and CCTV. Welcome, Selom.
Thank you, Duke.
Next to Selom is Samiri Afe. Samiri Afe is presidential correspondent, CTFM, CTTV, citynewsroom.com. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Duke.
So let's begin with the issue of education. The 15th update, many people were anticipating the reopening of the borders. But another thing that the president touched on was also the partial reopening of schools. So for second years in the junior high school level and at the senior high school level, a certain definitive date has been given to them. That's in October. But for basic schools and all others, the academic calendar in a way has been suspended and would be recommenced in January. To begin with you, Selom, looking at the anticipation of parents, the worry of many parents, the dilemma that many parents are in at this moment, how would you assess the decision that was taken by the president, especially weeks after a presidential team was put together to look at by the Ministry of Education as well, to look at the modalities for reopening of schools in the country? Well,
thanks so much, Duke, and a very good evening to the viewers. I think it's an interesting state of affairs because everybody is speaking from a position of interest as it is every time. Yes. So the president's 30th August address, call it the 16th update on the coronavirus pandemic, did a number of things. Three things stood out for me. The first one had to do with the reopening of the air borders or the airports. Number two had to do with school reopening for JHS2 and then SHS2 starting October 5. The other one had to do with the postponement of the academic year to January 2020, and indeed that was like the big elephant in the room. A number of reasons why it became the big elephant in the room. Primarily because there has been, as you rightly put it, some effort underway, instituted by the government itself or the education ministry to talk to stakeholders. So there was some consultation ongoing. And I understand that consultative process was to culminate in a report to be presented to the government on the 21st of September. So I think most of the schools, private schools especially, were looking forward to that date, only to hear that the president had made some comments or statements on the reopening. So the statement that I think caught them on the wrong side was the one on the postponement of the academic calendar. And a number of issues arise from that. One, the financial burden on the schools. Number two, the uncertainty about the academic calendar itself. Number three, the socio-psychological effects on the kids. And then number four, the difficulty for working parents, having to combine work and, taking care of the kids and homeschooling. Of course, they are kids. They are kids for the parents. And so there's argument that if they are your kids, you should be able to take care of them. But I think there's a reason why they outsource that aspect of the job to other people, and so they pay other people to do that. I think government took the decision in its view in the best interest of the country, because we have said many times that we are not in normal times, and nobody knows how the coronavirus pandemic is actually going to behave in the next few weeks or so. So you want to hasten slowly and even err on the side of caution if you want to open up things. But like I said, the fact of the consultation process ongoing and the president having to make the comment or the statement in the middle of that, was a bit unsettling, because they were told that they were going to, as it were, think through the modalities and a whole lot about the reopening date, how the academic calendar should be, etc. But the government announced.
So some say that amounts to preempting what the group advice that the group would have presented.
Well, not entirely. I think the government did what it had to do. So the part of the thing that is causing a lot of issue really is a financial burden on schools. So what are the issues? One, the schools have to run. They have to run. Some of them rent spaces. Some of them pay. All of them pay teachers. They don't really have funds from anywhere to support themselves apart from fees. So postponing the academic calendar means that the whole of the first term, as we know it, from September, it's not going to happen. So what happens within that period? Do you pay teachers whilst there's no work being done, or teachers will understand that because there is no school, nobody will be paid? That kind of thing. Also, the third term, as we've just concluded, and second term, at the point where the ban or the schools were closed, schools have argued that they did not finish collecting their fees, but they kept on paying teachers. So that is also another interest. Now, the postponement itself, like I said, will we continue paying teachers? What will happen? And then there are employment issues too. Some of the teachers will have to be out of job for the period, etc. What will happen in those periods? The certainty of the academic calendar, whether there will be the academic calendar will be compressed, so that when we go in January, we combine what we were to learn in first term and that second term, and at what point will the academic calendar resume to what we have? Or are we going to, from that point, have our academic calendar beginning from January and ending in December? I think the GES will have to come up with the details for us. We don't have that yet, and that is some uncertainty. Also, the academic calendar starting in September and ending in May, June is coterminous with what a lot of schools do outside the country. Though I know some schools also do January intake, and so the academic calendars begin in January. But a lot of the schools actually begin in September. So I think that's an uncertainty that the GES over time, I'm sure, will come out and then clarify. The conundrum for working parents is that they work. So you do an 8 to 5 job. Now you have to leave your kids at home. That is also an issue that I'm sure a lot of parents were hoping that an announcement of reopening will help ease that burden. Of course, when they started, I read a comment somewhere that when COVID-19 started, and the question was asked whether parents would allow their kids to go to school, they said no. Now the question is put again, and the president is said, okay, let's postpone the reopening, and the parents are up in arms. It tells you that the job of teachers is no joke.
And people have been contemplating having to get extra tuition for their kids, so that they don't have to.
So
it's a difficult situation for most parents.
It's a maze. Government is not wrong. Government, I'm sure, did what it felt was in the best interest of the nation. But I also think it's an economic issue for the schools and the teachers, because you can imagine if two parents teach in private schools and now nothing is happening, how do they get money for the home? So that is an issue. I think what should be happening really is a serious discussion. I know some discussion is ongoing, a serious discussion between government and the stakeholders on how government can assist some of the teachers who teach in the private schools. I hear there's some stimulus package being administered by the MBSSI, and the private schools have been asked to send names. But I hear the contention really is that MBSSI wants to pay the teachers directly, but the schools want the money to come to the school so that they administer that. So I'm sure in the next few days that issue will be sorted. and then I'm sure things will have to happen in their normal course.
If you look at the kind of model that private schools run in this country, they've really been this has dealt really a huge blow to them. But shouldn't this challenge have been anticipated in designing the program that the NBS, the stimulus package that the NBSSI was rolling? Of course, some members of parliament on both sides have decided out of their own pockets to pay these, private school teachers in their constituencies.
But that's not sustainable. And I'm not sure they can pay them for 6 months. It's fine.
Yes, but the NBSSI, the question is, shouldn't the NBSSI be sort of learning or taking cues from what they have done in terms of even the process of gathering names and the payment of money, the cash transfers and all of that, to the point that almost getting to 6 months after the closure of schools, people who depend on such sources of livelihood do not know where their next meal is going to come from. The situation is that dire for some of the teachers in these private schools.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, but it's two things. It's not as if there was just money waiting to be shared. And also, when you look at the issue of teachers, you have teachers even in the public sector with a lot of ghost names, validation, etc. Now you're going to collate private schools, it's teachers from private schools or staff from private schools all over the country. That's no joke, given how we gather data in our part of the world. So certainly it was going to take some time, it was going to take some effort. Whether the NBSSI could have done better, yes, I think so. But I believe that this is one of the busiest times, or the times that the NBSSI as an institution has been very busy. It's been the busiest time maybe in its lifetime, having to deal with small companies and having to deal with schools and teachers. Quite some activity ongoing. It's not as if they are dealing with only teachers. There are other businesses, other small businesses they are dealing with. So yes, they could be better at it, but I don't think they've been abysmal at it.
Okay, let me bring in Sammy here.
Good evening.
From the perspective of a parent and also from the perspective of someone who's been monitoring.
It's a difficult situation for parents, teachers, and the government, I'll say, because I've heard the president say that this whole pandemic, the most hardest hit institution, for want of a better word, is government, because everybody's depending on government for survival or getting government for help. So on the side of the parents, it's difficult for them having to have kids at home for over 6 months. I think the president asked schools to shut somewhere in March when we first recorded some cases. So to have kids stay at home for over 6 months and still counting, it's a difficult position for parents, because on the normal, when kids are in school, you get parents having the opportunity to do their few rounds, do things that they want to do when the kids are not around. But this time around, you have the kids with you 24/7. If you have little kids, you are at home with them shouting, "Hey, stop this, stop that." And unfortunately, if you have kids who consume a lot of food, the budget the budget for the kitchen is expected to go high. So it's a difficult position really for parents. And for the teachers in the private schools, being at home for over 6 months without salary, I don't know how they're going to survive. I'm sure some of them will look at other options, instead of staying at home for this long period of time, let me find myself engaged in something or that will bring income to myself and the family. So if I know our friends who were teachers in private schools, they've gotten other jobs to do, and they tell me that really, even when the president opened the school for all to go, he's not sure that he will go back to teaching, because he finds what he's doing now very profitable than teaching. So if the owner of the school that he works is losing one staff due to this particular situation, and so he says that he's not going to go back. So it's a difficult situation for the teachers as well. They have said that the teachers in the private sector are not bothered, are not worried about their concerns, because for them, rain or shine, they're still going to have their salary. But for they in the private school who their salaries depend on the school fees these parents pay for their awards, it's really a difficult position for them. And for the schools too, the schools need to run. They need to pay bills. As Salam said, if it's a rented structure, you need to pay monthly. The landlord or the landlady doesn't know that's covered. All I need is that I'm waiting for my money at the end of the month. So it's a very, very difficult position for the parents. That's why the schools introduced the virtual learning, which they feel will be a way to bridge the academic grab and get the students still learning whilst they are home.
But has that been effective?
It hasn't been effective,
especially for even in areas where people do not have access to the internet.
Some communities in Ghana where
there's Ghana Learning TV and all. But even the penetration of electricity across the country. And those
is a problem. I had the opportunity to stay in the 5 regions of the north for some 12 days, and there are some communities they don't even have electricity. Talk of internet. So if you're a student in this particular community, how do you watch TV to see what's happening on TV with regards to e-learning? How do you get access to the internet to learn? Because they say because of that the virtual learning was Zoom, and I was wondering how you let the school kids as young as 5 years be doing Zoom. That was also a challenge for most of the parents. The issue of data also came up. You had to buy data for your kids to learn or to learn through Zoom and the rest. So it was a difficult situation for everyone, including government, as I said, because the government was also one of the the hardest hits when it came to this whole pandemic, because everybody was dependent on government. I had opportunity to sit in meetings where institutions will come to the Jubilee House, come and meet the president. Mr. President, our businesses are collapsing. We need funds. The hotel owners will come. The teachers will come. Everybody will come, depending on government for survival. So it's really a difficult situation. Nobody anticipated it. We didn't expect that there's going to be a time where there's going to be a shutdown for schools for over 6 months. We really never expected this. So it's come as a very difficult situation for all of us, even those of us who are still in job or still have our jobs. It's still a difficult situation for us. So I feel we should have a clear cut policy or clear path in how we are going to deal with it. The Professor Dominic Committee, which is supposed to roll out the modalities on opening of the schools, we didn't know whether they finished their work before the president came to do the announcement, or their work is still ongoing. That we are unable to tell. It's something we need to find out. And find out whether the president sidestep them in making that announcement or not. So it's a difficult situation for everybody, Diego.
Going forward, Selom, looking at how should it be approached? Of course, the president, having the bigger picture in mind, has mentioned January 2021 as the date for the reopening. These are uncharted paths. Of course, places like UK and the rest have had to hasten slowly, even with the reopening of their schools, despite all the engagements and the consultation between the National Association of Head Teachers and the Prime Minister's office and issues like that. How do we proceed to ensure that, as we have that January 2021, finish point or timeline in mind, we do not get there and things do not proceed as smooth as we want?
Yes, I think in this time what we need is information. The various stakeholders involved in this must engage, and there should be trust in the engagement relations. So, for example, if you ask a section of the stakeholders to consult with a committee and advise you on something, I think sometimes we have to either hasten that process or slow the process on the other end, so that a big announcement, in the absence of a drastic, occurrence, doesn't come to make irrelevant the process of stakeholder engagement that has been set in motion. But I'm quite informed that the stakeholder engagement process is not being made irrelevant. The stakeholders have been asked to engage further, and I'm sure that in the president's next address or two, some comment will be made incorporating the suggestions of the teachers or the stakeholders, so we have a more encompassing solution to this. So I think the solution, in my view, is engagement and ensuring that the engagement process can be trusted. That is all we need in these times. We need more information. The engagement must be deepened, and there should be trust among the parties in the engagement.
This week also, the schools that run international certification programs, the National Inspectorate Board has had calls to talk about the charging of even fees, even as they proceed with this online tuition. I'm not going to ask about making a straight value judgment on whether one person is wrong or one body is right or wrong, but the situation, the pandemic has disrupted everything, including education. the fees that are being charged and the attempts to regulate it by the National Inspectorate Board?
Well, I think the National Inspectorate Board has a duty to regulate the private school sector. But what I'm not sure it can do is to tell them how much to charge. The market forces are there, but indeed, because they're a regulator, they're also looking at the public interest. So if, for example, you charge X amount of fees, and all you are doing is virtual teaching, for example,
not even effective.
and you know, parents or students have to purchase their own data, parents have to supervise kids, etc. And you are still taking or bent on taking the fees you were taking before, I think it's not fair. What I think the best fit was for the schools who were so minded to do, to reduce the fees by some percentage, 20-30%, so that will fill in the gaps, because there'll be data costs. Of course, the school also incur data costs. There'll be data costs. They are buying the time of the parents to sit with their kids, usually, to help them go through the process. I think that should have been the better option. But you see, if the schools fail to do what is right, I think it was even unconscionable for schools, A-class schools, charging dollars, charging a lot of money, to be bent on charging the same amount of fees for virtual learning. You know, virtual learning is good, but you can't compare that to the physical contact, especially as it's not something we've been used to. So for a lot of people, they are happy to do it, but after a while, they lose interest because it's not something that is known to them. And when you talk about having kids, they lose interest quickly. So to be bent on charging that high fee without any consideration of what the parents, who a lot of whom have lost jobs and have taken pay cuts, will be going through just thinking about yourself, I think it's quite unconscionable. I think what the better schools did was to reduce the fees a bit so that, you know, it would be a way of the parents and the schools meeting themselves halfway. That is the way to do.
They have said they would resist attempts to regulate how much they pay. And the National Inspectorate Board is saying they are not telling them how much they should charge, but just encouraging them to engage parents further.
As Salam said, the best solution to this is engagement. This is the time the PTA comes in, where the teacher parents constant engagement comes in. I know that there are a lot of schools here in Accra or even in Ghana where the PTA does not even exist. For them to have that constant engagement. I give a typical example of my boys' school where they created a platform for parents, you know, PTA and the likes. And the platform was collapsed in a week.
Why?
A lot of disagreements on the page. You know, it all boils down to the same virtual learning, and a lot of disagreement, insult here and there. So the one of the schools I just collapsed the group, and so now we've not even had, but then constantly there's this Zoom meeting where we get parents to talk about these things. So I feel that the best solution to this is a constant engagement with the parents, because the parents are key stakeholders. True. Very, very key. So without the kids, there's no school. We should have that in mind. Without the children, there's no school. So constant engagement with the parents, so at least they all be in one line or be on the same table. Will help resolve a lot of these issues that we are seeing. We are seeing today.
So engagement is key.
It's key. Engagement is key.
Must continue to engage parents, make calls to them, have a way of engaging them, let them speak. You know, because parents are key stakeholders. So you can't take unilateral decisions and then impose those decisions on the schools. If it becomes too much, it comes back to government. Mm-hmm. So government will have to find a way of stepping in. I'm sure that's why the NIB was stepping in, because I think what the NIB really should be doing going forward is to give a framework within which you can maybe charge or something, so it doesn't go beyond a certain threshold. Because the system, the heat in the system is huge, and it's eating up everybody. So if you are sitting on one side and hoping to get your pound of flesh, it won't be fair on the rest of the people.
Okay, so on that note, we'll take a break here. When I come back, we'll delve into the other issues. Of course, the show is interactive. You can send in your WhatsApp messages, and we'll read them for you. We'll take a break here.
Don't just watch, be wowed. Get fired up.
get down. Catch feels, drop the mic, choose to be moved, on the move, hot spot, any spot, enjoy a new view, walk in another shoes, power heels, paws, and feet. Take your stories to the streets. Both caught with court queens, ice queens, and yas queens. Fly away, come back home, and enjoy online entertainment on any screen. Sign up at showmax.com and change the way you watch.
I accepted a proposal of a guy who is 12 years older than me, and after about a month, he's asking us to face reality and just be friends. His excuse is that he's feeling the pressure to get married soon, while I still have more years ahead of me before I get married. We spoke about this age issues on several occasions before he officially proposed, so I'm wondering why he's using that as an excuse now. I feel there's more to it, but he says that's the only reason. Please help me figure this out. Thank you, and God bless.
Trying to figure out what his problem is.
I think within a month, if he feels, Charlie, I mean, like you said, from the conversation, maybe you realize, it's not working out.
In this Ghana, who gives men pressure to get married? That kind of serious pressure that they can't think.
Sisters, proudly brought to you by Vodafone Ghana. The future is exciting. Ready?
Hello and welcome back to What the Papers Are Saying. I still have in studio Selo Madonu, head of features and articles here at City FM and TV, and Sami Biafe, who's our presidential correspondent. The show, of course, you can contribute your thoughts at 0550585832. That's the number to send your messages to via our WhatsApp platform. Before we went to the break, we're discussing just the first part of the 16th update on the measures taken by the government to nip in the bud the coronavirus pandemic. We looked at the partial reopening of schools. Now we are going to the reopening of the country's air borders. There's also one major component of the speech that was delivered by the president on Sunday as part of the 16th update. Let me come into the studio and begin with you, Selo. So the directive is that clear-cut, you must have a PCR test taken within 72 hours before you board. And when you get here, you would go through the required processes and then get another antigen test, the cost of which has become a problem. First, let's look at the processes from a public health point of view, and then we can look at the cost implications.
Well, I think the formula being used is not different from what so many other countries are using. People have begun easing restrictions, and opening air borders is one of those. You can't continue to shut your borders forever. Business must continue. Things must happen. So one of those ways is to open your air borders. There's a lot of economic side to it. Jobs, because a lot of airlines are not flying, and so a lot of their workers have been laid off. The economy of the airport. I mean, there are taxi drivers, for example, at Kotoka, who went out of business because passengers were not coming anymore, or the way they were supposed to come, or the way they were coming before. Shops, etc., at the airport, the restaurants, etc., in those areas, who would also be out of business. And these are people who have dependents. So shutting the airport has its own economic challenges, and it's important that with time we ease those restrictions. So easing the restrictions now starts. So the president announced that within 72 hours, you should have taken a PCR test. And the PCR test, I should say, is the gold standard test for COVID-19, for example, for many other things, because it seeks to look for the genetic material of the virus. And so, it's almost certain that once you do the PCR test, the result you get will be accurate, almost certain that you will get an accurate result. So there is the antigen test, which is also good, which seeks to look at the protein material on the virus. So when you do the test, the antigen test detects the protein coating or the protein material on the virus. It has a good specificity and sensitivity rate. It is good, way better than the antibody test, which most people use the cassette method or the RDT for. That one uses the serum to test the antibodies, and that usually comes in after you have had the disease or for a number of days to see if your body's immune system has been triggered to release antibodies. And so this one tests for the antibodies, and it uses the blood and the serum instead of the respiratory, the swab, and all those things from the respiratory tract. Okay. So yes, from a public point of view, I think the system as we are doing, and what a lot of other countries are doing, is to give a double layer security in terms of protecting your people from the disease. So before you embark, you do a test. That is the gold standard, and they are clear. It should be a PCR test. So you do the test, you enter, or you board a plane. The question is, if I did a PCR test before embarking, why must I do a PCR test in less than 24 hours after I'm disembarking? I've disembarked. I think
you could have caught the virus on the flight.
You could have caught the virus on the flight. Number two, you know, once you catch the virus, it is not certain that immediately you do the test, you get a result. In matters like this, the virus must replicate and get to a point where the viral load is enough to be picked up, you know, in your swab, you know, so that it can give a result that really reflects what it is. So maybe you could be in the plane for 24 hours or more. Within that time, naturally, the viral load would have reached the threshold that would be easy to be picked by any test. So that could happen within that period. So when you get down, it's important to check again to be sure that as you are entering the population, you don't pose a risk to the population. Is it 100% foolproof? No, but it offers a good protection for the rest of the population, you know. And even whilst you are on the plane, you could catch the infection, you know. So all these are put in place to ensure that the public is protected and people don't come from outside the country to bring the disease. As you saw, it start on the 12th March or so, where 2 cases from abroad came in, and what we see now, as they say, is the rest is history.
For me, I come back to the cost, but for the process that we lead into 2 weeks before the president gave a clear indication that in 2 weeks, looking at September 1st as the timeline in mind, I'm looking towards that. Consultations will be done. Health authorities, port authorities will look at all of that. Looking at the processes that were announced for the consultation and the measures and the modalities that were rolled out, what would your assessment be?
For me, I feel is a good one. But before the reopening, the consultation that were done, I know the president met quite a number of people in the aviation industry before this decision was taken. Airport officials, those the experts or the analysts, as we call them, who are involved in all these things before this particular decision was arrived at. The National COVID-19 response team had countless meetings before this particular decision was taken, and in all these meetings before this was taken, the priority was that are we safe, or will the country be safe enough to open its border, considering that, as Salom said, our first 2 cases that we had in Ghana were imported cases. On the 12th, when we were all sleeping, we saw a press conference by the health minister and information minister announcing our first 2 cases. So the caution has always been that we don't import more cases, which the government had over the month said that is something that we need to avoid. So the opening of this airport was a decision well thought through before it's taken. As Salon said, the airport economy, you know, on Wednesday, the aviation minister was on Point of View, where he made mention that, you know, some airlines had to stop operations because the airports were closed. They had to sack some workers or ask some workers to stay home because the airports was closed. And then some mentioned quite a number of challenges that people had to go through because the airport had to shut for this long period of time. And I was reading elsewhere that this is the longest time the Ghanaian airport has been shut. You know, since the Kotoka International Airport became the Kotoka International Airport that we know.
It's almost 6 months now.
It's almost 6 months, Duke. Almost 6 months that you don't have airports landing at your major or your international airport. So it was a challenge. A lot of thinking went into it before this decision was taken. For the test, I feel it's the best. Before you embark, you run the test. Before you disembark, you run the test. It's the best decision any government can take to protect its citizens. And across the world, I'm sure this is the test every government is doing. Or this is the particular program or policy every government is doing to protect its citizens against this pandemic that we've seen now. So the process yesterday, our colleague here, Hansen Ajima, was at the airport, to run us through how the whole process is. I think it's a well-organized process. If it is as it was shown on TV by Hansen, I feel it's the best that we've seen. We don't know what happens in other countries, but for ours here, what we've seen so far, I feel it's the best. I refer to Wednesday again when Bernard asked the aviation minister Kofi Ada, on the average, he said that the Kotoka airport takes about 1,200 passengers at the peak. So he asked that, what if we have all these people arriving in the country at this particular time? Would there be a way where we can test all of them, fast track the process, so we don't get them crowded at the place, because social distancing has become a major issue.
It's 30 minutes to get your
results. It's 30 minutes, fine. But then as technology-based, computer-based, what if we reach there, then there's a breakdown in the system? Is there a backup plan? Is there another way out we can get this thing done before people get crowded over the place, so the social distancing rule is not broken? So I think all these ones have been put in place before this particular announcement by the president.
So let's look at the cost. There's a chart that has been going around, of course, looking at comparing countries that are using the PCR test, others that are using the antigen test. Of course, the justification has been made by the Deputy Minister for Health that the antigen test $150 is fair. It's a fair price, considering the fact that if you test negative, there's no need for any quarantine, or there's no need for quarantine if you test negative and you would go into the society and do what you flew back into the country to do. The comparison has been made with Nigeria, which is charging $130, but there's still a quarantine process that you have to go through. Is a $150 charge fair?
Well, I want to know how much it would have cost ordinarily. I don't know if the airport authorities worked in some administrative. I don't know what constitutes the $150. I think the assumption really, or usually, is that once you're traveling from abroad and coming to a country, you should have money. But I beg to differ. The situation, it may be so for quite a number of people, but the COVID-19 situation, especially for Ghanaians who are stranded abroad and are now coming home, it's quite a big ask to want them to pay $150, upon arrival. That's quite some good money, in excess of 700 cedis just for a test, which is good.
But these are the same, the calls and cries for evacuation consistently for the past maybe 3 months, maybe a month or so,
like 4 months,
into the pandemic, when citizens of other countries were being evacuated.
But evacuation doesn't mean you slap extra charges on me. Evacuation could mean that we are your citizens, come and take us home. But
there were criticisms also when they came in and government took care of everything. People are like, this is too much. This is too much of a burden for the state. For the state to show that.
People will say a lot of things. I think the criticism at the time was that the hotels that people were putting were the top level hotels. So was the state really supposed to, pay that much for this when you could put them in middle level hotels? I think that was a discussion around the time. But I think that move by government was good. Maybe we could have saved some more money, but it was good government took that step, quarantined the people, and we saw the result of that. So it was great. The $150, I would want to know how much it would have cost without, ordinarily, because the PCR test, which is the gold standard, was around 80 to 120 cedis or so. The one that everybody was doing, the gold standard, people were doing from the beginning. So I don't know how this one is so expensive. What I think is that government should have a plan for people who cannot, afford this? What happens if you cannot afford it?
Sure.
Or could it be that if you cannot afford it, then you don't start your journey at all? How about Ghanaians who are stranded outside and so have spent or squandered their money and so do not have enough money to undergo this test or to pay for this test, at the point of entry? I think government must have a plan to help these people, especially if they are Ghanaians, help these people to ensure that they come back home safely, because if they were indeed stranded outside, I'm sure they would have gone through a lot already. And coming back to be slapped with this, I'm sure will not be something they will want to. But, something has to give. Government cannot shoulder everything. Something really has to give. But whether $150 is that thing that must give, I'm not quite sure.
Satisfied with the answers?
I've been doing
Bureau of Public Safety saying that this is a contravention of the International Health Regulations 2000.
And they're asking the health minister to withdraw this directive. But I've been doing some reading, on this particular subject matter, and what I discovered was that Zimbabwe, for instance, you pay $210 to get this PCR test. In China, you pay $150. In Togo and Benin, you pay €150, and in Nigeria, $130. And even after all these payments in these countries, you still have to get your own hotel where you be in quarantine for 14 days, awaiting.
After taking the test.
After taking the test.
So the tests are not that as rapid as ours. 30 minutes.
Ours, yeah. So after paying all this amount of money, you still have to be in waiting for 14 days before the result will come. Compared to ours, where you pay this amount, $150. You wait for 30 minutes for your results. If it's negative, hooray. If it happens to be positive, immediately, and then you are taken to a treatment center. Compared to other countries and what we have read, I feel our situation is far better compared to these other countries. So because if you are paying only $150 to get a test, which will take like 30 minutes for you to get a result, and you don't have to pay for your hotel bills to stay in quarantine for 14 days, and as compared to other countries, I think our own is the best. I read a statement from the Bureau of Public Safety who are saying that this contravenes a WHO convention, and then asking that the health minister withdraws it, and then they've even petitioned the WHO proper to also look into this particular matter. Well, we're thinking that they may come up with another option, or how much they feel that could be taken, the amount that could be taken to for this particular result. But I reading through their statement, I didn't find any alternative. All they said was that it was in contravention of the law, of a convention, and that it must be withdrawn. So for me, Duke, personally, I feel what the government is doing is the best. The amount being charged, 150. Well, many people will say it's on the high side. As Salon will say, you have Ghanaians stranded outside, but you also know that it's only Ghanaians who are coming down. The other foreigners are also coming down, not Ghanaians per se. So if we are charging this amount of money, I think it's okay. It's okay.
Looking at the fact that this is, from what we've been told in the breakdown, this is only for the test, and there's no cost at all going to even the maintenance of facilities at the airport. That still maintain that.
Maybe who knows? All these factors
is fair.
All these factors, builds up to this amount of money. Maybe there's a percentage that will go into the maintenance. There's a percentage that will go to the health officials who are running this test. There's a percentage. As Salam said, we need details. We need detail of how they arrive at this particular amount, what went into the build-up, and the likes.
Okay, so let's go on to the final issue for discussion. It's got to do with the issues towards election 2020. The president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has been touring the Volta region this week, commissioned some projects, a 5-water town project in the Volta region. Was a flag bearer of the NDC as well, John Dramani Mahama, is up north in the Upper West region as we speak. He's also been canvassing for support, canvassing for votes, reiterated his message on the Japa royalties minerals agreement, as well as the big push agenda looking towards the NDC's manifesto launch on Monday, which is expected to come up on Monday. There's also the NDP and the PNC. Let me begin with you, Salom. Looking at all the mix, MPP, NDC government president, John Dramani Mahama, PNC, and then NDP is also set to acclaim Nana Akufo-Addo Ajima Rawlings. What will be your the issues that jump at you from the campaigning or the canvassing of votes that have begun, even though officially that season has not started?
Yes, I think election 2020 and its electioneering period will not be as we've seen before, big rallies, etc. I'm not sure. Even though we've seen the candidates going around, I mean, pretending to be on top of their cars and having a lot of people massing around the cars, almost like a rally. But, I mean, because of the pandemic. So I'm not sure we will have those big rallies like we've had in the past and the excitement and things that come with it. I think a lot of it will be fought on the media. A lot of the media will be crucial and critical. A lot of it will also be fought on social media. I've seen some short videos of candidates talking about some issues, etc., films, etc. I mean, just trying to push the message across. That is how it will be. Talking about the campaign itself, well, I also think that I'm not sure if I'm to call it a renaissance of the smaller parties. So we see the PNC, for example, trying to shake itself a bit, trying to, I mean, amidst all the controversies, I mean, some good names coming up saying they want to take the party to where it used to be, where it was, they call it a third force. I'm not sure whether it was really a third force, even in the early 90s. We've seen CPP, Green Street has been maintained, but we've seen quite a new crop of national leaders, which...
Salom, please hold on to the thought on that. Hold on on that thought. We'll take a break here. We have to quickly take a break. We'll come back and then we'll wrap up the program.
Don't just watch, be wowed. Get fired up. Get down. Catch feels. Drop the mic. Choose to be moved. On the move. Hot spot, any spot. Enjoy a new view. Walk in another shoes. Power heels. Paws and feet. Take your stories to the streets. Put court with court queens. Ice queens and Yas queens. Fly away. Come back home. And enjoy online entertainment on any screen. Sign up at showmax.com and change the way you watch.
Welcome back. This is what the papers are saying. Before we went to the break, Salom was making a point about the political parties and PNC.
Yes, so we see the PNC also trying to make a case that, I mean, the past should be behind them, and then we've seen a new face or a new crop of leaders also aspiring to lead the PNC at a flag bearer level. And, you know, for a long time, this will be the first time that we will not have, in fact, since 1996, this is the first time we will not have Edward Mahama, you know, making a stake for the flag bearership. In 2012, he was not on the ballot, but he contested the flag bearership and lost to the 40-year-old Hassan Ayariga at the time. So this is the first time he's not in the contest at all, because I'm sure he's hung his boots and his gloves. And now we are having a new crop of people, Awingo Bit and a few others. It will be interesting to see what they bring. CPP, I've spoken about it. NDP, I'm not sure what really they are offering yet, because there's nobody contesting. Nana Akufo-Addo and Rawlings will be acclaimed, you know, and a few others. The NDC and MPP are the dominant parties in this whole enterprise. And I'm not sure we are to expect anything different from what we've seen in the past. Of course, Jomama will go around the country, sell his message to the people. So will Nana Akufo-Addo, now as president, do, with all the benefits of incumbency, go around the country and sell his message to the people. So it's always easier as an opposition candidate. In 2016, Nanado went around the country with one message: just give me your vote and I will do ABC for you. That was easy. On the other hand, if you are an incumbent, you would have to account to the people for what you did or you are doing with their mandate, and so you can justify a case for yourself for them to return you. That is what Nanado is doing now. Jomama is going about just promising that he will do AB, like free healthcare, free primary healthcare. He will legalize and regulate Okada. He will pay allowances to persons with disabilities, etc. So we've not really heard, you know, a headlineable promise from Akufo-Addo, because he is the president. So when you make such a fantastic promise, the question then will be, what did you do, or why haven't you done it? So a lot of the message has been about consolidating the gains, what they have been doing so far, consolidating. And because of the advantage of incumbency, you realize that everywhere he goes, he makes a statement by cutting the sword to do something. That is the advantage the incumbency gives you. So that if you want that project to be completed, then invariably you have to return them to power and that kind of thing. So it will be an interesting race, but we only hope that the race is civil, is decorous, and we don't have a lot of insults making the rounds, that the race will be issue-based.
Sorry.
We should expect this, because we've seen the two candidates from 2012, 2016, and now to 2020. So we should expect them, moving across every part of this country, advocating why they should be retained to office or continue, as they say. But then I've heard President Akufo-Addo say that this election is going to be an interesting one, because it's going to be between a sitting president and a former president, and it's going to be an election of records. What did you do when you were in office, and what I'm doing when I'm president. So if electorate should read through the lines, we've heard President Mahama making quite a number of promises. As Salom said, legalizing Okada, going to pay assembly members, going to fund allowance for persons with disability, and the likes. This evening before we came on air, I saw a video of him sitting in the Atakambu, as they call it, Mahama Kambu, sorry, as they call it, making a strong case why indeed this should be legalized. Just this evening we saw on City Newsroom that Okada riders in Ashaman are also endorsing the legalization of their operation. So I'm sure that there's a promise which will resonate with a lot of Okada riders who say that indeed they have a candidate who, when becomes president, will legalize the activities for them. President Akufo-Addo, on the other hand, has also been on tour. I think yesterday he was in the water region, or the day before yesterday, to cut sword for a water project in Amejope, where he made some few pronouncements and said that indeed the water region has seen a lot of development under his tenure than any other government, including the NDC, which is the stronghold of the water region, which is the stronghold of the NDC. So he's like a man who is going to marry a beautiful woman. He will knock at your door until you agree to marry him. And so he was making this analogy to say that indeed he will continue to pursue the people of water region until they agree to vote for the MPP or the election. So we are going to see a lot of these things. As Salon said, a new bit of people coming up, the PNC, I won't go bit. I understand David Apasara is also lacing his boot to become the flag bearer of the party. And we have the PPP. We are told this weekend or next weekend we'll also elect a flag bearer. Dr. Papa Kwesundu, I understand, will not be contesting again. So a new person is coming to replace him on the ballot. So we should see new faces and old faces in this year's election, which is going to be very interesting.
All right, just some of your messages, two of them. Daniel Abori from Borga says, please, the government should listen to the private schools because they also play a huge role in the economy. John Kobe from Ashaiman says that proprietors of the private schools just want schools to resume so that they can continue to use the teachers to amass wealth for themselves and pay them peanuts. How many of them pay good salaries? They should give us a break. That's what you think. Abdul Mumin Wunam from Tamale says, I think it's important for our leaders to consider the students staying in the rural communities or who live in rural communities who are prone to so many barriers in education. Most of them will be forced to marry, while others will be forced to join other professions that will be generating incomes to their family, and that may be the end of their education. A couple of other messages, but we would end what the papers are saying this edition here. My name is Duke Mentopoku. Thank you very much for watching this edition. I had with me Selom Adonu, head of features and articles here at CTFM and CTTV, and Summary Affairs, our presidential correspondent. My name is Duke Mentopoku. Keep watching CTTV for the very best in programming.